Today we're going to be talking about how we can analyze and enhance writing using pronouns. So first we need to make sure that we understand or remember what a pronoun is. So as a reminder, a pronoun replaces a noun. Some example of these include the words she, we, my, his, and them. These are all examples of pronouns. We use pronouns in writing because it helps make the writing smoother because we don't have to repeat the same noun over and over and over again. It also keeps our writing from sounding too repetitive and helps our writing flow better when we read and write it. So for example, we can take these two sentences, Cooper's bowl of food is empty, Cooper is really hungry, and by adding a pronoun, we change it to Cooper's bowl of food is empty, he is really hungry. Today we're going to talk about a particular type of pronoun. There are lots of different types of pronouns. We have things like personal pronouns, which replace the names or objects. We have specific object pronouns, which object in that sense means the object of a sentence as opposed to the subject. And we also have possessive pronouns. Today we're going to learn specifically about a type of pronoun called intensive pronouns. Now, it's not super important that you remember the names or the types of pronouns, but it's really important that you understand what they are and why we use them in our writing. So with intensive pronouns, we're going to start by taking a look at several of these pronouns. And I want you to think about, what do all of these pronouns have in common? So for singular pronouns, we have myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, and their plural equivalents of ourselves, yourselves, and themselves. This should be fairly easy to see. All of these pronouns end in a form of the word self, either the singular version self or the plural version selves. This is important to know because intensive pronouns are often these sorts of pronouns that end in either self or selves. Let's take a look at that word intensive, or its similar adjective with the word intense. What do you think about when you hear the word intense? You might think about an intense workout or an intense thrill ride like a roller coaster. When we're talking about intensive pronouns, it's important to remember that intense and intensive are adjectives that mean strong, forceful, or powerful. So when we are talking about intensive pronouns, we're talking about powerful pronouns. We use intensive pronouns in writing to add emphasis in our sentences. Intensive pronouns also often change the tone or the meaning of the original sentence. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples of this. Let's look at the sentence, I finished the project. We can add an intensive pronoun and change this sentence to I finished the project myself. The myself is the intensive pronoun that we've added to this sentence. Adding that intensive pronoun really emphasizes the fact that the project was completed by one person. When using intensive pronouns, or when we encounter intensive pronouns, it's important to think about the situations in which they're used. So a few examples of when we might use an intensive pronoun for this sentence is when it's important to show that it was done by one person. So if the project is really large or really impressive, to the extent where somebody might think that a team of people worked on it, and you want to emphasize that no, it was done by one person, you might use an intensive pronoun. Another situation where you might use this intensive pronoun in this sentence is if it was a group project, but the other members did not participate with the project and one person did it by themselves. So you would add that intensive pronoun myself to show that the other members of the group didn't help with your project. Just an important reminder about intensive pronouns. These are added to complete sentences. So the sentence, I finished the project, is a full and complete sentence without the intensive pronoun. You want to make sure that if you're reading a sentence and you think it's an intensive pronoun, but if you take that intensive pronoun out and the sentence no longer makes sense, or is no longer grammatically correct, then it is not an intensive pronoun. So let's look at another example of adding an intensive pronoun to a sentence. Our original sentence here says, the dog opened the bag of dog food. If we add an intensive pronoun, we might say the dog itself opened the bag of dog food. By adding that intensive pronoun itself, we're emphasizing that the dog opened the bag of food on its own. We might use this in situations to show surprise that the dog was able to do that, or to show that the dog was the culprit. If your parents came home and there's a huge mess and they say, so-and-so, you opened this dog food bag and it's all over the floor, you might add this intensive to really emphasize, no, the dog did it. It wasn't me. Intensive pronouns usually come right after the subject, but not always. So let's take a look at these 3 examples that are blank, and I want you to ask yourself, what intensive pronoun can we add to make sense of these sentences? Did you cook this amazing meal? Blank. Our original pronoun in the sentence is you, so we can add our intensive pronoun yourself. Did you cook this amazing meal yourself? Emphasizing that we are asking if they cooked it on their own without any additional help. That sentence, did you cook this amazing meal, is a full and complete sentence and question on its own. But we add that yourself to emphasize that we're asking if they did it without any help. Leave it alone, I'll do it myself. And then finally, Sophia and Oliver can take care of it blank. We've got 2 subjects here, Sophia and Oliver, which tells us that this is going to be a plural intensive. So we would plug in themselves. Now that you know what intensive pronouns are, be sure to be on the lookout for them as you read. Remember that they can change the entire mood or feeling of a writing, so they're super important to look for. And when you're creating your own writing, consider adding them yourself.